Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Spurs Live. Now, Josh is away today, so I will be hosting, but here to help me, a regular face on the channel, my co-host, Matt. Matt, how are you?
Yeah, good. Nervous for Friday, but good.
Me too. Apologies for the lateness. There were some problems on mine and Matt's side with audio, but we're here now, and we'll quickly segue into it. One person that's not having many problems at the minute is Daniel Levi. We're going to start off with a bit of FFP chat, aren't we, Matt? Relevant for Spurs at the minute because everyone is selling except us. Obviously, Newcastle rumours of selling Trippier to Bayern, Wilson to Atletico Madrid, Almiron to Saudi because they can't afford to buy due to the FFP constraints. United seem to be at the edge of it. Arsenal, likewise, don't have much money to spend this January. But it seems like Spurs have managed to get themselves very much in the clear. How have they done it, Matt? How have we done it?
By not spending the money that we wanted to spend for years.
Yes, to an extent, I guess. But
Is
is Daniel Levi, has he been a bit of a genius in the long term, is what we're trying to get at here? Was this all part of Levi's plan years and years ago?
In all honesty, I think it is far too early for us to answer that question. And the reason being is ultimately it's a case of if teams like Chelsea, Newcastle, Man City are sanctioned, then yeah, you can say Levy's been a genius. But if none of them get any sanctions, then what's Levy done really? Because those clubs have spent huge amounts of money, and if they don't fall foul of financial fair play, then you'd say that Levy, unfortunately, has just been overly cautious as opposed to a genius. So,
for those that don't really know about FFP, like we said, a financial fair play dictates now that within 3 years you can only lose 105 million total. I think that went up a bit during COVID. But over a period of 3 years now, clubs have to declare a no more than 105 million loss, including spending, everything. All of the club's finances have to equate to that.
yeah.
And what counts against it is obviously your profit and your revenue. And Forest have already been charged and are going through that process. Everton have already had 10 points deducted, and it looks like they might have further point deductions. And like you said, City got those 115 charges. I think it's like 30 or 40 of which are for those exact same sort of charges. And it looks like Chelsea might get it later down the line, but Spurs are in the clear big time, and it's all due to this stadium. It's one of the biggest money makers in football at the minute. Since the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium came into play, we've gone from making 45.3 million in the last season at White Hart Lane, which was 16-17. And in the 21-22 season, Spurs brought in 106 million in matchday revenue alone, which was only second to United. And that's without the figures for things like the Beyonce concerts we held this year, the other numerous concert boxing events, NFL partnership, and without even selling the rights to the stadium name yet. And it's estimated that for 2022-23, Spurs could have made 500 million in revenue alone, which is insane. Absolutely insane. And it would blow out most other Premier League teams out of the water completely. And it means that Spurs can basically freely spend as they please. And we have spent decent money in recent years. Let's not, after the Poch era, we spent, 150, 200 million in that post-Champions League final summer, and we've done near 100 million probably most years. And it looks like for Spurs, the spending doesn't have to stop the way it does for other teams, Matt. Do you think that the FFP restrictions are too stringent? And do they allow the smaller teams to be able to catch up to the bigger teams? That's the big debate, isn't it? A Newcastle being sort of held back by the Premier League to protect the big six.
I think there's two sides of the coin on this. Because one side of it is you look at it and go, oh, is it unfair on the smaller teams? and it makes it harder for them to catch up. But then the other side of it means that the financial fair play means that the bigger teams can't just go out and spend and keep spending, which is historically what's happened. So, yes, there is the argument that
in that same vein, then, do you think that maybe there needs to be some leeway in these FFP rules throughout the years where we need to adapt them for the larger teams compared to the smaller teams, so that we don't get a situation like a QPR or a Reading or something like that, where a club outspends their means and causes relegations, loss of jobs and whatnot, but we have them strict enough that situation can't happen, but also that the top clubs can't pull away, because it's not just the top six and the rest of the Premier League, is it, with these FFP rules? It is the Premier League promoted clubs going back down to the Championship that are by far and away pulling away now. I think we're seeing in that sense as well.
Well, they do get big balloon payments.
The parachute payments, yes. But once those parachute payments run out, then it's very difficult for those clubs to maintain the systems that they put in place and whatnot.
There is an argument to say that you could have a certain set of rules for clubs with a revenue over a certain amount. So you could say, right, if the club's revenue is more than 25 million a year, they then are hit by the existing financial fair play rules. And if it's under 25 million a year, then maybe they can have
but then you get those arguments. The thing that you'll get backlash for is Newcastle, because they're a case study where it's not revenue that's the problem, because their owners have more than enough money to fund Newcastle indefinitely, but they're not allowed to. Is that wrong, or is it the whole? Because their point will be, how can we catch City if we're not allowed to do what City did? City have created an almost monopoly over the Premier League now. How are we supposed to catch them if we're not allowed to invest?
Okay, that's partially true, but then it took 10 years for City to get to where they are. It didn't
happen.
Patience
the answer then? Is that the key? Yeah, what it boils down to patience.
I think so. And the reality is you can't say, oh, right, Newcastle should now be the dominant feature in football and they can go out and spend 2 billion just to have the best team in the world. Like, I think there has to be a form of patience. Absolutely. Because if you look at City were taken over, and they brought in some decent signings. They had old Robinho, do you know what I mean? They had some marquee signings, but they didn't just overnight become this amazing club. And the other thing as well, and we've looked at it before, is what City do is every single year they will buy one or two 50 million pound players. Right? And they've done that consistently. They don't, apart from Grealish, I can't think of another player where they've spent the sort of money that United and Chelsea are spending.
Well, right? If you're a Newcastle, and this is how we're going to bring all that chat round to Spurs, should they be looking at Spurs' model over the past 10 years as the model on how to go from being that sort of mid-table club, revenue-wise, marketing-wise, having that non-global brand? Because Spurs didn't have the biggest global brand when Levi took over at Spurs. I think that's fair to admit. Marketing-wise, Levi's taken the club to a whole nother level over a period of 10 years without any investment from the owners, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Newcastle need to be patient, and they need to look at it as a 5-year plan. And every window, they bring in one or two 40, 50 million pound players.
Well, and is it getting more creative than that as well? Does it matter that things like the infrastructure of the club need improving before the pitch? So, they need to improve their training, the stadium. Maybe they do St James's Park, they transform it into a multi-purpose stadium like Spurs have done. More options in terms of, Spurs have just announced this F1 thing that they've got going on outside the stadium now.
Yeah.
The concerts, the skywalk, and then the training facilities. We rent out our training facilities to Brazil, for example, who came to train at our pitches. Do clubs need to get more creative in light of these FFP rules rather than just forcing change through money?
Absolutely. Because look, like I said, I'm not going to laud Levy as a genius just yet because we're a long way off. Okay.
Yeah.
When we're back in the top 4 consistently, we're winning trophies every 2 years. Like, I don't think necessarily every year, but an FA Cup every 2 years, a league title every 2 years, get to another Champions League final, these sorts of things. When we're consistently doing that, at that point, you can then go, yeah, fair play. I've hated Levy for 10 years, but it's finally paid off.
Do you think he knew this was coming? Because to me, it feels a little bit like he did, because he's been advocating for FFP to, show its teeth a bit more for a little while now.
Yeah, and I think because he's so squeaky clean with our finances, I think that's why. Like, there's clubs out there who are kind of trying to just kind of like turn their back on FFP a little bit because they want to kind of ignore it. Whereas obviously Levy has been like FFP. And I think it's understandable because of the way he's run things. He wants other clubs to be held accountable for what they're doing outside of FFP rules.
Is he right to think like that?
Absolutely. Like, I'm a very black and white person, and from my point of view, a rule's a rule, a law's a law, right?
I think there's also the point. I think the Premier League's whole point is about sustainability more than anything else, and I think what Levi and Spurs have demonstrated throughout the pandemic, in particular, was we were one of the few clubs that didn't fail to lose pretty much more money than we were pre-COVID. If you go, we definitely lost money. And Levi said that we lost a significant amount of money, but we were never in danger of breaching FFP charges in that COVID period. And we were one of the few clubs to do it because of how the club has built itself up structure-wise internally with the stadium, the facilities and whatnot. And is this the model that if Spurs basically the model that FFP is trying to promote? And, is that going to serve us well over the next decade or so if they keep up with these FFP charges?
I think if they start being a lot stricter with it, I mean, for example, I don't see how Chelsea have gone out and spent £1 billion and are within financial fair play. I
don't argue amortization and whatnot, but I think obviously those rules have now been changed by the Premier League. You can't amortize wages and fees anymore.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, what they were doing when they were spending all that money was giving players 8 or 9 year contracts, and so then they were then able to fit within the old rules, which they've now changed what you're allowed to do with this, because like I said, they were giving 8 or 9 year contracts, 10-year contracts to try and go, oh, well, yeah, I've spent 100 million, but it's only 10 million a year because it's a contract this long, right? Because it's a 10-year contract. Whereas obviously financial fair play is now getting wise to that and saying there's a limit to what you can offer and a limit to, you can give a 10-year contract, but I think it's a maximum of 5 years that they're allowed to spread it over. So you can still give a 10-year contract, but it's still a maximum of 5 years. So suddenly that goes from 10 million to 20 million a year. And that makes it tougher for them.
Well, I think we're also seeing the fruits of Levi's labour almost in not just the transfers themselves, but the way that Spurs are operating in the market nowadays. In terms of just this month alone, you can sort of use it as a little microcosm of how we are dealing with FFP compared to other clubs. Our business was done. The majority of the business we needed done in January was done in a few days because we didn't have to think about it because we weren't worried that, the Premier League are behind our backs chasing us down.
Yeah.
And that helped us massively against United. Obviously, I know we ended up getting Romero and Van der Ven back for that game, but we also managed to get Radu Dragushin in early doors and didn't have to worry about competing with other clubs money-wise for his signature. The money was there, we could spend it. And now it seems to become a common theme in January. I know I'm sure you've seen the links with Nusa from Club Bruges, which will be 30 million euros apparently with a loan back clause. And we did it last year with Destiny Udogie. And it's becoming a thing of now Spurs can invest in high quality youth from other clubs and happily loan them back with no worries about FFP, about the future implications of it. And,
Well, yeah, and
is it smart? Is it smart business now that Spurs are doing rather than before where it was very gung ho and reactive? Everything seems so proactive now.
Yeah, I mean, it's as a Spurs fan, obviously, I was alive for the 1991 World Cup, FA Cup, but I was only 4 years old, so I didn't quite get to enjoy it. I've seen 2 League Cups in 1999 and 2008, which I was old enough to enjoy. But outside of that, there's not been a lot. And as a Spurs fan over the last 2 decades, there's been a lot to kind of turn your nose up at, worry about. Oh, we've done this, we've done that. We've made a rush signing on deadline day, and look, I don't want to get too ahead of myself because things could very quickly fall apart. Okay, we've seen it happen before. But it does feel like we are in a more exciting time where we're building a young, proactive team. Like if we get Nusa in, the same as we did with Udogie, buy him, loan him back to the end of the season, great. It feels like we're building for our future. It feels like we're building an exciting team that maybe not this season, maybe not immediately, but certainly within the next 2 or 3 seasons, suddenly we are a force to be dealing with. Okay? Because we've got young defenders. Okay? It's not like Chelsea, 6 years ago when they're holding on to 32-year-old John Terry.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like Man United 10 years ago when, again, they're holding on to aging centre-backs because, yeah, they've been amazing centre-backs, but they've held on to them because they don't want to let them go. Whereas we're now in a position where, our oldest centre-back is 26.
Yeah, so, discount Davies. Yeah. And it's the thing is, it's happened so quickly. And I think Spurs have just shown you don't have to get it right for long. You just have to get the right coach and then a couple windows of the right recruitment.
Yeah.
And your club's transformed instantly. And the whole model of Spurs, I could say the word proactive earlier, but, I go back to a word. It's before we seemed desperate in the transfer market. We seemed desperate constantly. We were chasing shadows of other clubs in terms of getting players in. Every signing was late on in the window because we were having to haggle over everything. We struggled with outgoings. And now we seem to have a good first 11 that we can now build on, which we didn't have before. We were constantly trying to plug holes in a sinking ship, but, with the selling of Kane, it seems like that ship has finally sunk, but we've got a new one now. And we're not trying to plug holes anymore. We're just trying to improve on what we've already got, which is a nice change, I think, at Spurs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also feel that part of the issue in the past has been Spurs being a slightly smaller club. Like, yes, we've got heritage. Yes, we've done some good things. Yes, we've been finishing top 4. But now, with the stadium, the infrastructure, the training facilities, and with Ange Postecoglou at the helm, I feel like we're a much more exciting project that players are a lot more enthused about joining. Like maybe 6, 7 years ago, if Bayern Munich came in for Dragusin the same time we were going for him, he went to Bayern Munich. Whereas this time round, I mean, they'd have got more money for Dragusin if he'd gone to Bayern.
Yeah. And there's
Dragusin,
rumors about the wages as well that he's getting,
Dragusin
was it
would
nearly
have made
75% more that
yeah,
Bayern were offering?
yeah, much bigger salary. But Dragusin has spoken to Ange. He's looked at what we've got on offer. He's obviously looked at our team and he's gone, yeah, that's a young, exciting project that I want to be part of. Now, don't get me wrong, in 3-4 years' time, he may be on the way to Real Madrid, or Barcelona, like his absolute joke of an agent has been coming out and saying. But then I'm going to be honest, if we sell him in 3-4 years' time as an amazing player for 80 million to Madrid or Barcelona, then I haven't
Well,
really
that's
got
the model, isn't it? That's what Levi wants, and that's what. But other clubs have shown it can work. You look at Declan Rice leaving West Ham in the summer. West Ham are a better team now, not because Rice left, but because they spent the money well on Rice. It was a good investment. They sold him for a ton of money, and they replaced him with Alvarez, Ward-Prowse. Now they're getting in Calvin Phillips. They've got Mavropanos in, and their spine of their team improved after Rice and Leverkusen selling Diaby to Villa, and then they get in Boniface, and they get in Xhaka, and they get in Grimaldo, and they're top of the league, and they look a far better team despite losing what was probably their best player in Diaby last year. It's that model is completely sustainable as long as you have a smart recruitment team.
Yeah, I mean, look, we sold Kane in the summer.
Yeah,
right. We sold
which people
Kane
really don't talk about enough. Honestly, it's so criminal how people discard that loss.
Yeah. But the fact is, we sold Kane in the summer, who is the best English striker. I personally think he is arguably the best striker in the world.
I think he is.
I think he is, right?
I think you could make an argument that on form, maybe Jude, but he's the best player in Europe right now in terms of form. I think you could make that argument that Harry Kane is the best player in Europe right now.
Yeah, 100%. Like, look at his scoring record at Bayern since he turned up there, right? And people are like, oh, yeah. Well, I'm not going to lie, right? He was doing it in the hardest league in the world, which is the Premier League, right? He's doing it in the hardest league in the world for a massively underperforming team last season, and he scored 30 goals, which I'm not going to lie, any other year would have easily won the Golden Boot.
Well, we've all been saying this, haven't we? He's been this good the whole time. People just don't like it partly because he's a Spurs player. It was the same with Bale.
Yeah, because he was a Tottenham player. Because he was a Tottenham player, people are like, oh, he doesn't win anything. He doesn't like, and it's like, all right, he hasn't won anything. Okay, like, yeah, it's embarrassing. Spurs haven't won anything for so long, and obviously Kane is part of that because he spent a long time. But like, winning stuff is not the be all and end all. If you can look at a footballer, right? And the reality is, all the pundits who know what they're talking about all rate Kane. The reality is, the only people who don't rate Kane are jealous little domestic fans, right? You got Liverpool fans, Arsenal fans. Kane hasn't won anything. Kane's rubbish. He's not, right? Kane is arguably the best striker in the world, and we've sold him. But now we've got Werner in on a loan with an option to buy, which I think is a good piece of business. We've got Dragusin in. We're potentially going out and getting Nusa, who's going to get loaned back and join us in the summer, right? It's potentially exciting time. And I'm going to be honest, yes, Kane is a massive loss. And I mean, it would have been great to see what we could have done with a front three of Son, Kane, and Kulusevski.
Yeah.
That would have been exciting to see. But at the same time, the way Ange plays his football, we're a better team. And look, it's very difficult to say because you don't know, because the way things pan out, you can never account for the what ifs. But I mean, I'm not going to lie, Kane could have stayed and we might be 7th in the league at the moment.
Yeah.
Because we were too heavily relying on him. So it then stifled the style of play that Ange wanted.
Yeah, well, I think we all think that we would have been a better team with Kane here. But yeah, I agree that players have stepped up in his absence a lot more than I think we all expected.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? And look, we don't know. The reality is we might be top of the league with Kane or we might be 7th. We don't know. But the reality is he has gone, and the Tottenham team that plays at the moment excites me.
Well, yeah, it's ushered in a new era. Just to round up the whole sort of chat that we've just had, it ushers in a new era. Kane's leaving, doesn't it? And it feels like the club in the past 6 months has changed from top to bottom. You know, whether that's down to Levi, to Paratici, you know, to Scott Munn, who's coming, obviously, Lange and Ange. You know, I think it's probably a culmination of a lot of right appointments and a lot of right decisions all coming sort of at the same time. But it's definitely turned the tide at Spurs, and it's the most excited I've felt in a long while, which is why we're going to talk about, I don't know if we're going to get to it today, but at some point, you know, whether what's more important, the journey or the destination, because this journey's been incredible so far. It's the best I've felt since Poch. I know you feel the same way. I think you mentioned in the other video, it's the best you felt since Poch as well.
Yeah.
It definitely gives that same feeling of those early Poch sides when we were sort of gunning for the title. We didn't quite get there, obviously, but it gives me that same enjoyment watching the team.
So for me, 2017, 2018 was the best Poch time. Okay.
Chris, thank you.
Here's Chris Peters. Yeah, like 27-18 was the best time. I know we had a Champions League final in 2019, but actually, if you look at our league form after Christmas that year, our team had fallen by the wayside. Yes, we had a fantastic Champions League run, but the team itself was not doing well. And that's when the wheels came off. And then lo and behold,
that is such a good point, Matt, because it's so overlooked how people seem to think we were still the side that we were throughout Poch's whole tenure. We were terrible that season. And I think that was the most shocking thing about that Champions League run. Not that it happened, but the fact that it happened with that side, because that was that was the worst Poch side I think we had, other than the one that obviously got him sacked. But that was that same side, really.
Yeah,
apart from a couple of additions. But
it was essentially the same side, and the wheels fell off, and then we had an awful run, and then we had a Champions League final, which we unfortunately lost. And then the start of the next season, it was just much of the same from the end of the previous season, which led to Poch going a couple of months later.
And ever since we were sort of stuck in that horrible cycle of switch manager, which has changed, and we seem a rejuvenated club. And do you know what? A player that sort of embodies that, which I want to talk about, talking about transfers and FFP and whatnot, Emerson Royale. They've turned down a bid of 20 million, which if you'd have said that a year ago, Spurs fans would be going mental. It'd have been mental that someone bid 20 million. Obviously, I think it was Al Nassr, Ronaldo's team, but they've rejected it. And I see why, though.
On Twitter, I've seen a lot of Spurs fans going like, "Oh, are you mental? I can't believe you're turning that down." Blah blah blah. But in all honesty, unless we're getting a bid of 30 million plus,
30 is for me personally. 30 is my price point. That would be mine.
That's me. 30 million plus, and I'm happy to see him go. But for less than 30 million, I'm not happy to see him go because I really like him, right? I'd like him to stay, but for 30 million, I think, okay, well, that's enough for us to then reinvest in that position.
Exactly, because he's so versatile. He's not just our backup right back; he's our backup left back. He's been centre back for us for large parts of the seasons, and he's performed well in all three of those roles across the defence.
That's the point, right? I think Emerson Royale embodies a fantastic club player. He doesn't moan, he doesn't whinge. He's happy to be in a rotational spot in the club. He's professional about it. And he's been used in multiple positions where, in all honesty, he's excelled. Perfect. Like
exactly, I agree. He's a utility player.
Yeah,
and I'll tell Cocker, give the boys a like. There's more in here than thumbs up. Come on, boy. Yeah, please do like the stream. Make sure you're sharing it about, because me and Matt are still going to be on for another probably half an hour or so. We might do the City preview after this chat about Emerson Royale. But yeah, please do drop a like on the stream, and if you haven't already, subscribe.
I think 30 million, and that's money that we can reinvest in a good in a good.
Well, it's the inconvenience, isn't it, as well, in January? It's the inconvenience of having to replace someone that has given minutes to us in several positions and in
And
positions that we're weak, you know?
I'm not gonna lie, our two main centre backs before Dragusin were out for a big
Yeah.
chunk. And I'm not gonna lie, Emerson Royale was a fantastic, like, he wasn't as good as Van de Ven and Romero. He wasn't, simply because
Mhm.
they are some of the best defenders in the league. And I know Arsenal fans are going to be like, "What about Gabriel?" Right? And that's fine. Gabriel is a good player. I'm not gonna poo-poo that. But Romero and Van de Ven are fantastic players. And again, if they were in a City team, they'd probably get applauded. But unfortunately, because they're in a Tottenham team, the same as with Harry Kane for years, they're always going to be like shot down a bit. People are always
Yeah.
going to be like, "Oh, they're not that good. They're not whatever." Right? Yeah, Emerson Royale wasn't as good, but I thought he did a fantastic job for coming in and playing out of his position. I thought he did really, really well. And he's a player that, look, if we get the right amount, I don't mind saying goodbye to him so we can reinvest the money. But unless we're getting something in the region of 30 million, I think we hold on to him
I
because
think, again, though, that's the luxury of what Spurs have now built it with other clubs scrambling for every penny that they can get.
yeah,
Spurs have got the luxury to hold on to a player like Emerson Royale and get the right price that we deserve,
I mean,
rather than having to, sort of do a fire sale for no reason and just take the money when it comes.
well, yeah, I mean, there's talk of Almiron going to Saudi Arabia for 30 million.
Just ridiculous, that, though, isn't it?
And I mean, it just screams of panic from Newcastle. It screams of another dodgy Saudi deal where it's like, I'll get some money in from Saudi because we've got links to them and they can keep us afloat with FFP. But like, I mean, I rate Almiron higher than 30 million.
Do you?
Yeah,
Really?
I reckon he's not massively more, but I reckon he's worth 35, 40.
I wouldn't give you 13 or 14
Oh,
for
no,
Almiron,
no,
let alone 30.
don't get me wrong. As a Spurs fan, I wouldn't have him, right? But I do think for Newcastle, he's been a very good player.
Well, I just think, their situation with Almiron and ours with Emerson are almost weird parallels in that they have to sell a starter because they need to get within their FFP restrictions, and we
Yeah,
can keep our second choice right back until someone offers us a good price on him, probably something
exactly.
more than we paid for, which I think was 23 million, because we don't need the money. And not only do we not need the money, we are
Yeah,
nowhere near needing any sort of money at
yeah,
all at this point.
which is amazing because like other clubs are in a position where they're like, oh yeah, we could do with some money quite quickly, and we're like, well, we don't need it. So if you offer us 20 million, we're going to turn it down. They've said that is it Al Ettifaq who are looking at him, or no,
No, it's Al Nassr, I think, is after Emerson.
Al Nassr, yeah. And like the fact is, like there's talk of them coming in with an improved bid, which I assume is going to be about 25
Mm.
million. I'm hoping we turn that down too.
I assume they'll turn it down. I think everyone thinks the 30 is going to be the sticking point. And yeah, guys, if anyone hasn't watched it, beginning of the stream, we did a whole Levi FFP chat. That's what we've been leading up to until this point, really,
Yeah,
on the model that Levi set up and everything. And we don't praise Levi a lot on this channel, but it seems that his time has almost come in the limelight. I know the Athletic did a really good article on it, on how the stadium. It's the stadium, isn't it? That's the whole sort of crown, like the jewel in Levi's crown, I suppose. That's what everything was leading to, was the stadium, and it seems to be paying off for him, for Spurs. And I think, Matt, it'll be interesting to see over the next few years, well, even over the next couple of years, if the Premier League keeps showing their teeth to the other clubs with regard to spending, and if Spurs can really push on with the new model they've set out in transfer wise and the revenue that they're bringing in. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with all that sort of stuff. But I hope you're enjoying the stream, guys. I think we're going to move on to now our Man City preview, because I don't know if we're going to have time tomorrow. so we're going to do it now. Friday night, FA Cup. And it is the game that I think both sets of fans didn't want. It's the one fixture that neither set of fans wanted. They'd have had anyone else. But, Spurs at home to City, every year we think we're going to lose to them. It's going to be the year that they finally score against us. And we always do them. Yeah, they're still yet to score a goal in 5 years, I think it is, at the Spurs Stadium. Matt, you nervous?
Yes and no. I'm always nervous with City. I saw an interesting thing earlier. It was a Spurs fan on Twitter saying, I just really don't think we can do it for the 6th time. He then followed it up with, but at the same time, I didn't think we'd do it a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th time. So maybe it can happen.
It is a ridiculous. It's the most ridiculous. It's one of the most ridiculous records in football at the minute. Their away record. I don't understand it. I'm honestly have no clue how it's happened. I don't think anyone does.
I'm going to be honest with this City team, right? The treble-winning City team, right? The City team that's dominated English football for the last 6 years, right? And we still yet to concede a goal at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
The fact that they couldn't do it against Nuno Spurs,
Yeah, it's bizarre, and I suppose the only thing one thing that I'm really hoping for is that this gets in the City players' heads, because the longer it goes on,
it will be on their minds. If Pep said it, mentioned it jokingly in that interview, it will 100% be on their minds.
Do you remember Tottenham went, I think it was 20 years without winning at Old Trafford?
Yeah.
Until that Bale game.
Yeah.
In, I want to say 2008? No.
No, it's later than that, I reckon.
No, it was 2012, I think.
Yeah. Was it 2-0 or was it 2-1?
I can't remember the exact score, but I remember Bale scored.
Yeah.
And we won at Old Trafford.
I do know what you're talking about.
And I think it was 2012, right? And it was the first time we'd won at Old Trafford in 20 years. And since then, we've had a few results. We don't always win at Old Trafford, but we get draws. We've had a few wins. We've had a few losses. But once we'd broken the cycle, and I feel like that's the thing with City, right? Once they've broken the cycle,
yeah, once they've scored against us, they'll probably score 2 or 3.
Yeah, once they've scored, once they've broken the cycle, it breaks the hoodoo. Okay, yeah. But until then, I'm happy. And I love that thing earlier. Oh, we won't do it for a 6th time, but then I didn't think we'd do it for a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th time. And it's like, yeah, absolutely. And at the same time, I'm relatively relaxed about it, if I'm honest. Bizarrely, look, I think if Tottenham beat City on Friday, I think we then become favourites for the FA Cup.
We'll definitely be up there, because who's left in it? Arsenal are out. It'll be Liverpool, United are still in it.
Yeah.
I think Chelsea's still in it. But this game is just interesting because of the narrative. And it's, Chris has mentioned it in the chat. One, will Madders be back? I know there was a video of him today with his boot on still, with Pedro Porro. I don't know if you've seen it on social media. He still had the boot on. But there's
tapping on his ankle, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Dan KP that said in one of his articles that this was the aim date for Maddison. It was the 26th. That's when he wanted to be back. But at the same time, I don't know if you were watching that City Newcastle game. It was very much, the king returns. KDB is back, and he was back with a vengeance, and he showed everyone why City are still title favourites, because he is, again, one of those contenders for the best player in the Premier League right now, and one of the best players in the world.
He's been the best player in the Premier League for the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I think, and it's to a point where I've seen a lot of debate about it recently on who's the best midfielders in the Premier League ever. For me, I do think KDB, probably for me, I think is the best midfielder to have ever played in the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue Steven Gerrard.
Steven Gerrard's my number 2, and Steven Gerrard was my number 1. But then I look back at KDB, and it's the treble that he's got. He's the best player in a treble-winning team.
No,
He's won
he is.
numerous Premier Leagues.
But
He's been the best player for the last 5-6 years.
But then
his numbers are a joke.
The article I saw, the argument. Now, don't get me wrong. I think it's a toss-up. I think we've had some very good. I mean, Lampard's up there, Scholes is up there, Gerrard's up there. We've had some very good midfielders in the Premier League, right? The argument they were making for Gerrard versus KDB, though, was that the City team would probably still win things without KDB. But Gerrard was the one who dragged Liverpool to the Champions League. And
I get what you're saying there. And that's one of the big things I've always said for Gerrard as well, that he dragged Liverpool kicking and screaming to literally everything that they won. But then has this season, like just in a little microcosm, not shown that when KDB isn't on the pitch, City are nowhere near the same team. They might give the illusion that they are because the football always looks the same.
I'm not going to lie. His impact in that Newcastle game showed. I mean, it's his first game back from injury. Well, no, he'd featured in the FA Cup game, hadn't he?
KDB won, Bentley second. Bentley, some player. Some player.
Bentley doesn't even make the top 20, but okay.
I don't know if you've seen Bentley on Golf Life, but go and watch it if you haven't. It's absolutely incredible. Him and Jimmy Bullard is an unbelievable
his impact in his first Premier League game back, right? You often talk about players coming back from injury and it takes them a bit of time to settle in. He's not started the game. He's come on as a sub and he's literally come on, scored. He was unplayable. And
there's an aura about him. Like when he was just standing on the sidelines, it looked like the Grim Reaper coming on to just finish Newcastle off. And that's exactly what it was. You know, someone's good when the best players in the world, it's their job to literally turn around and say, "Where's Kevin? We'll give it to him."
100%. So there's talk that Haaland's back in training.
There's rumors he's back, but he might not make this game. I don't think he's going to make it.
So I think that's what they said. He's back in training, but he's probably not going to be ready for Friday.
Yeah, I don't think they want to put him against Romero, to be honest.
So we'll have to wait and see.
I understand it.
If I'm honest, I honestly don't really care whether Haaland's back or not.
I don't think it obviously makes a difference. Haaland's probably the best striker in the Premier League. He is the best striker in the Premier League, and he's an absolute machine. And it's probably a bit of a robbery that he didn't win the Ballon d'Or. But I love the story that Messi that won the World Cup anyway. Besides the point, but if City are going to beat you, they're going to beat you down anyway. KDB is much more of an influential player in that team for me than Haaland is. I'm way more scared about KDB than I am ever about Erling Haaland.
100%. And I'm not going to lie, with Romero and Van de Ven, Haaland doesn't worry me. Yes, I know he's the best striker in the Premier League. I understand that. But I'm not going to lie. Yes, he's turned up in some big games, but he's also banging in goals every week against Bournemouth. And although Bournemouth have been very good this season.
I get what you mean. I think our centre-backs have the tools to deal with Haaland by himself. I don't think there's a team in Europe that has the tools to deal with Kevin De Bruyne when he's at his best.
I see Kevin De Bruyne at his best. I see him ghosting past Sarr. Obviously, Sarr won't be playing because of AFCON. But do you know what I mean? Like,
give KDB 5 yards and you're dead. Whereas Haaland, you've got to give. He's got to have some space in the box.
I'm more worried about KDB than Haaland. Like, simple as that. Like, I think we've got the tools to deal with Haaland. I don't think any team in world football has the tools to deal with KDB, and that's the way I see it.
Well, there's another question on KDB and how influential he is. Is Maddison coming back to us as big as KDB is coming back to City? In terms of, I know that. Obviously, Kevin De Bruyne is a better player than James Maddison, but in terms of how they influence their team, the importance to the team, their roles in the team, do you get where I'm coming from with this comparison? Yeah, Maddison return to us is just as big as De Bruyne to them.
I'm not going to lie. This season, Maddison has arguably been the best midfielder in the Premier League.
And up to his injury, I agree. I think he was the best.
Yeah, and the reality is, obviously, KDB was injured for that time period. So there's no comparison because he wasn't playing. So up until his injury, I think he was the best midfielder in the Premier League. And you get a lot of Arsenal fans out there go, oh, Odegaard's much better than Maddison. Well, no, he's not. Like, don't get me wrong, I do think Odegaard is a good footballer. Like, I don't think he's bad by any stretch of the imagination. But I think Maddison is a much better player. And if you look at his goals and assists compared to Odegaard, like Maddison's still on more goals and assists than Odegaard, despite the fact that Maddison's been out for the last 2 months. Like it speaks for itself. So yeah, don't get me wrong. I would not. I'm not gonna lie. 2-3 years time, maybe there will be a conversation to be had. If Maddison keeps improving, there's a conversation to be had about whether Maddison is as good as KDB. At the moment, he's not. He's just not.
And I think injuries will play a big part in that conversation with Maddison.
Yeah,
his ability to keep fit is his biggest question mark for me.
But then, having said that, you could say the same about KDB. He has at least 2 months out every season injured.
He is a lot older though. He's 34 now?
Yeah, he is older. He is older. But no, like the reality is, yeah, Maddison is nowhere near as good as KDB because he's unbelievable. But just coming back to your question, I think that, yeah, he potentially has a similar impact on the Spurs side as what KDB has to the City side. So if they're both back for that game, if Madders is back, if they're both back for that game, that leads for an exciting game because you've got two of the best midfielders in the Premier League back for their respective sides, leading their sides on.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest loss, which actually we just had a mention from Chris in the chat, it's Son. Because when we talk about someone that won, City's real Grim Reaper is Heung-min Son. I think
he loves scoring against City.
I think everyone remembers the, do you know who I am? Goal against City in the Champions League when Pep called us the Harry Kane team. He scored against them already this season. He scored under the Nuno. He scored under Jose. He scored under Conte. Like, the boy loves playing City, and he is so clinical. And against a side like City, where we're not going to get a million chances, I know we almost debunked that myth last game against them that Spurs couldn't play against City because it was tactically we're just a worse version of them. It just wasn't true, and I think Ange actually adapted quite well against City, considering he had 4 fullbacks on the pitch at one time. And that's not going to be the case this time. So it'll be interesting to see how the dynamic between the two teams changes tactically because of the players we have back rather than the players we have missing. But Son is a big, big, big loss. Although Richarlison's on fire at the minute.
Yeah, so I personally, if Solomon is back, I'd like to see Solomon playing on the left and Kulusevski. Well,
no Werner. He did get an assist on his debut, and I think Kulusevski, if they don't start Maddison, Kulu's going to start in midfield, isn't he?
Well, in all honesty, I want to see a midfield of Bentancur, Maddison, and Kulusevski.
Well, this is what I was going to ask you, because Sarr and Bissouma are obviously away.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of chat about when those two come back from AFCON, who's your ideal midfield three? Because I think Maddison and Bentancur are absolute locks. They have to be. They have to be absolutely. They're two of the first names on the team sheet in general.
And I think with the exciting football that Ange plays, and Ange plays on the front foot, and Ange is not scared of outscoring teams. He's not scared of going out to just dominate teams.
It's very Brendan Rodgers Liverpool, isn't it? It's always we'll score more than you no matter what we do. It's like Kevin Keegan style.
It's like Fergie's United. Fergie's United did it for years. For years. Especially when they're winning the Premier League and stuff. They do it all the time. They go out and the games would be 4-2, 4-3, 3-2. Like, they would always concede, but it was always a case of, okay, yeah, we're going to concede goals. We know we're going to concede goals, but it doesn't matter because we'll outscore you. Fergie's United did it for years. And the reality is, like, that's why I think it would be exciting to see Maddison, Kulusevski, and Bentancur.
Is that your three then? You think that's the three? Is that harsh on Sarr? Because Bissouma, I'll be honest, Bissouma for me isn't even in consideration for that starting spot with those. If whether you're talking about Kulu, Madders, Bentancur.
I'm going to be honest, right? First 3-4 games of the season, I was like, Bissouma can't be dropped.
Yeah.
However, I
It's
feel that
post-Luton game, isn't it? Everyone puts it down to that point.
100%. And I since then, I feel like Basuma has fallen by the wayside a little bit, yet Sarr is just on an upwards trajectory and he's just getting better and better. So, yeah, I mean, I'd say that in that three, Bentancur and Sarr are probably interchangeable. I'd say
Right.
Bentancur.
So would you play Benson? You wouldn't play. Do you think Sarr can play the pivot? Because I think he's much better as an up and down 8 than he would be in a single pivot.
No, I think he can do that because he's got the engine to get back and cover for defence. He's got the engine to do that, but still push forwards and help out in attack.
Well, either way, it's going to be nice to have a bench again, isn't it, really? Because that's 100%. Been a problem in the past few weeks. We haven't had any bench at all. No offense to our youth players or anything like that. And I almost wish Donnelly and Santiago, when they've been in the squads, did have more minutes, but it's not the same. I get why Ange doesn't want to risk it.
Yeah, no, and I think I would quite like to see Solomon on the left. I would like to see maybe Richie through the middle, just because he has been in good scoring.
You can't change Richie. I don't think. I think
he has been in good scoring form. And look, when a player hits a good vein of form, you don't take it away from them, because then you disrupt them. Okay, so I'd have Richie through the middle, and then I'd either have Timo Werner or Brennan Johnson on the right. And I would then have Kulusevski, Maddison, and Bentancur in the middle, and then the back four picks itself. We all know the back four is Udogie, Van der Ven, Romero, and Porro.
Would you rather, though, if Kulusevski isn't going to play midfield, it's an if.
Yeah.
Would you rather have Kulusevski on the right and Johnson drops to the bench? Or would you try and back on the left like he did at the Emirates against Arsenal?
Yeah, the problem is
inside forward.
I want Manor Solomon. I like him. I do like him. I think he's a more exciting winger than Brennan Johnson.
He's more direct. He's definitely more direct than Johnson is.
And that's what I feel. That's what the Tottenham team needs. Like Johnson's got pace to burn, but he just lacks the directness. And I think that's an issue. So, okay, if Kulusevski goes on the right.
So we're doing lineup here. So obviously, defense: Vicario, Porro, Van der Ven, Romero, Udogie. That's the back line.
That picks itself, right?
Yeah, that picks itself. Your midfield has got to be Bentancur. Depending on if Madders starts or not, it's him or Kulu.
Yeah. So,
and then what? Skippy or Højbjerg? It's got to be because we don't have.
Yeah. So if Kulusevski was playing on. The reality is, if Maddison's back, I feel Kulusevski could play on the right, and we play Bentancur, Højbjerg, and Maddison.
That's what I think is going to happen.
If Maddison's not back, then I feel Kulusevski needs to go into that attacking midfielder role.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree. But then it's Brennan Johnson's again. He's a kid that we talked about this last week, didn't we? He's come under a lot of fire recently, and I think it's a little bit harsh. Some people probably would disagree with me, and that's fine as well. They'll say 4 assists and 1 goal in 16, 17 appearances now.
Yeah.
And I get it. It was a lot of money, and he's not given the output everyone hoped for. We've got to be a bit more patient with him, I think. But do you just take him out the firing line a little bit, especially in such an important game? Because this is important. Don't get it twisted. We don't all expect to come on a massive game against, like a massive result against City, but it is an important game considering we're out of the Carabao already.
It is an important.
It's our only chance really for a cup.
But at the same time, I am bizarrely relatively relaxed about it because in a couple of years, we might be talking about this differently but at the moment, I still think that we're the underdogs. I still think that City are expected to win. Right?
Yeah, definitely. They absolutely are.
So I feel like the pressure's off us. Like City are expected to win. So if they win, it's like, oh yeah, we all expected it. But if Tottenham win, we get excited. And then I do believe that if Tottenham beat City, we then become the favourites for the FA Cup. Right? really, it's only Liverpool that stands in our way at that point, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, but just on that Johnson point, if you're Ange and Madders is back and you can put Kulu out the right, do you take Johnson out of the firing line for a bit and maybe bring one as a sub? Or do you stick to your guns and just keep keep going, keep playing your football, it will come?
No, I do think if Madders is back, Kulu goes out on the right.
He's so much less ineffective on the right, though, isn't he? You know, his level of productivity goes down significantly. Not that he works so hard on the right, Kulusevski, but he just doesn't get on the ball and influence play like he does when he's in the middle.
No, but
that's what's going to be the problem going forward, isn't it? With
Madders
coming back.
I still think he's good enough.
Like I agree. I think he's good enough, but the debate will be: can they coexist? And with his work rate, can they coexist? I guess.
Like I said, in an ideal world, I'd like to see a Maddison, Kulusevski, Bentancur middle three. That's what I'd like to see, because I think that would be exciting. With
his work rate, I could see him doing that 8 role, especially if you've got Bentancur and Sarr putting out fires behind him, which, you know, I don't know if Sarr, I'm still not convinced if Sarr can play the lone pivot. Bentancur definitely can, but they can do that job of just putting out fires and doing the work for the two of them.
I think Sarr can.
Fullbacks, there's not that much spacing behind our 10s anyway. No. Really.
Like, yeah, we play a high line. So, yes, you want your number 6 in that pivot role and sitting and what have you. But at the same time, I think Romero and Van der Ven are good enough to clear that to clear that up.
It would be frightening if Maddison and Kulu could coexist as 10s. It would be frightening.
It'd be unbelievable. If we could get I would love to see Bentancur, Maddison, and Kulusevski. I would love to see that. And then Werner or Johnson on the right, Solomon on the left. Next year it'll be Nusa on the left.
We hope.
Richarlison or Son through the middle. I'd pick Son through the middle over Richarlison. But obviously with Son away at the Asian Cup, it's Richarlison. But no, I'd like to see that. But no,
it'll be interesting to see what he goes with regardless on Friday. We'll find out closer to the time. But Matt, with everything that we've said in mind, score predictions. Are we going through to the next round or not?
Joshy asked me for a score prediction last week, and I said it was. Yeah, he asked for the score prediction in the group last week, and I said it was too early. But he was like,
"What are you saying now? Because you've only got a couple of days."
Well, yes, he was like,
we'll do this hypothetical. Madders makes the squad.
So yeah, he asked me last week, and I think last week I said 2-0 to Spurs. I was very, very optimistic.
Make sure to get your score predictions in the comments as well. I want to see what other people are saying on this. But go
on. I'm now thinking that it might be time for them to break their hoodoo and score at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Is it enough, though?
I think it could be 1-1.
Does it go to extra time and pens in this round?
Yeah, I think now it's pens. I think they've stopped. I think from the... Is this 4th or 5th round?
5th round, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think Prem teams enter at the 4th. Let me double check.
No, it's 4th round. It is 4th
round.
Yeah. But I think from the 4th round onwards, it goes to penalties now. They stop the replays. Is that right?
Does 4th round go to replays? There will be mandatory replays that end in draws, including the 4th round. So we'd have to go to the Etihad if we draw.
Okay, so the 5th round is where it goes to extra time penalties.
So do you remember when we got done by Norwich? I think it was in the 5th round, wasn't it, on pens?
The reality is, I don't want to replay. Whether we win or... I don't mind if we win or lose.
I don't think anyone does.
Obviously, I do mind, but I don't want to replay. Right? At the end of the day, the way I see it is we're not expected to win. So if we do win, amazing. I then think we're favourites for the FA Cup. If we don't win, I then look at it and go, okay, fine, we're out of the FA Cup, but now we've got all of our team coming back in the next 3-4 weeks, and it's then our only focus. No Champions League, no League Cup, no FA Cup. Our only focus is then on the league. And we got one game a week for the rest of the season with a break for the FA Cup. And I don't see it as a bad thing. And I think we can push on. And look, I'm not saying we're going to win the league, but I do think we could get a solid second or third place finish.
I think it's possible. With everyone fit, we were top comfortably. And I think it is possible with how other teams are dropping points to get up there. But right, score prediction, Matt. Score prediction.
All right, I'm going on a limb. I'm going my original 2-0 to Tottenham Hotspur.
2-0 Tottenham. The hoodoo continues. See what we got in the chat. Angelo, Spurs win 2-2. That would be incredible. I know that this fixture gives some incredible ones, but to win 2-2 would be pretty nuts. If that would be even possible.
That'd be insane.
Yeah, no, you can't win 2-1 Spurs from Chris.
Yeah.
Who says a replay could possibly work in our favour because of City in the Champions League, which I get, but I don't think there's ever a good time to play City with the depth they have.
They got a lot of depth. Like,
I really want to believe that there's something in this squad that we can go and win this FA Cup, because I thought before we went in, if we didn't have to play City, we were going to win it, and we've got them. But I do think if we beat City, we'll win it.
I think we're certainly favourites. I don't know if we're necessarily going to win it. We might lose to Liverpool in the final or semi-final or something. But
which would be fair enough. But I do think if we beat these, we've got a good chance of winning it. A really good chance.
I do think that if we beat City, we become favourites. I do believe that.
I still think Liverpool would be favourites, but I think we'd be a decent second favourite.
No, I think we would be favourites. Don't get me wrong. I think we could easily lose to Liverpool, but I think we would be favourites.
I do think they'll break the hoodoo this game. I'm going to go 3-2 Spurs. A really hesitant, like hopeful 3-2 Spurs. Because if we look at the reverse fixture against City, when we went away to them, we drew 3-3. We actually gave them a couple of their goals, really. The Basuma losing it just gave it away in midfield needlessly was how they got, I think, their third one. You know, a couple mix-ups as well. I do think we can do them at home, because the atmosphere you hope will be electric, because it is such a big game for us as a club right now, and I think we do have such a good chance of winning it. But yeah, there's our predictions. Thank you to everyone in the chat that did join for the live. We're going to be wrapping up now, but we might be back with another live before the game at some point, hopefully either tomorrow or Thursday, to chat more Tottenham in case there's any big updates before the game, and hopefully we'll have a bit more clarity on the squads heading into Friday night. But thank you to everyone that joined. Make sure to drop a like on the stream. Check out other videos throughout the past couple of weeks, and keep an eye on that sort of hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our future videos, especially when Josh is back. The content will be much more regular when he does return into the fray. But thank you to Matt for co-hosting with me today, and thanks to everyone that joined. It's been a great stream, and we will see you later. Come on, you Spurs.
See you later, guys.